we present to you the Respiratory Care Interstate Compact. My name is Grant Minix. I'm a policy analyst at the Council of State Governments, and I'm here alongside my colleague Carl Sims. And I'll let Carl introduce himself and go ahead and start with our today's presentation.
Everybody, Carl Sims with the Council of State Governments as National Center for Interstate Compacts. I want to thank everyone again also for being here today. So I'm going to start off the presentation about the Respiratory Care Interstate Compact, just reviewing the compact model legislation as an overview, also explaining what are interstate compacts and just a little bit more of the basics about the compact before we get into the more detailed section by section review. So if we go to our next slide here, we want to also introduce CSG to you a little bit further here. So CSG is a nonpartisan membership organization that represents the three branches of state government. So we assist state governments with the exchange of policy insights and ideas. So states are better able to understand what other states are doing from a policy perspective. So they're able to learn and leverage those ideas. And this also extends itself to the concept of interstate compacts. So we go to the next slide. Within CSG, we have the National Center for Interstate Compacts, of which Grant and I both work. So it's a technical assistance center that is dedicated to help states with consideration of interstate compacts or how they can use interstate compacts as a mechanism to cooperatively address shared goals. So our work extends itself to licensure compacts. And so with the respiratory therapy compact project, that is a partnership between the Department of Defense, CSG, and then the American Association for Respiratory Care. So CSG and the Department of Defense have partnered for the development of new licensure compacts. And among that, we're partnering with professions to develop those compacts. So AARC was the lead applicant that applied on behalf of the respiratory therapy profession to develop a licensure compact. So we've been working with AARC on this project since October of 2023. And this is a multi-year project. We'll go through the timeline more in particular, but it's also stakeholder driven by having this public hearing session, being able to help present where our project's currently at and a way to get feedback from the regulatory and professional community and those using respiratory therapy care services as well as we look to develop the model legislation for the compact. So let's go ahead and define what is an interstate compact. A compact is a legal, legislatively enacted agreement between two or more states. So states utilize compacts across a number of different policy areas, but commonly they're there for them to help properly address shared problems, maintain sovereignty over state issues like occupational licensing, and respond to national priorities with one voice, such as increasing healthcare access. A good example outside of the occupational licensure space is your driver's license. So your ability to use a driver's license from your home state and be able to operate on any other roadways in the United States is thanks to a compact where states have agreed to recognize that license granted by other states and not requiring motorists to get a licensure in each state they want to travel in. So helping reduce those barriers that would otherwise exist as a way to really benefit from the increased commerce and all the other freedoms enjoyed with not having to get that licensure in place. So just one quick example, there's over 270 active interstate compacts that are out there that states are a member of, and on average, a state is a member of about 43 interstate compacts. So for occupational licensing, there are three primary goals that licensure compacts seek to achieve. That includes facilitating multi-state practice, maintaining, even enhancing public health and safety, and also preserving state authority over professional licensing. So you'll see here some of the numbers with licensure compacts and how states have been really considering enacting these over the past few years. There's 17 active interstate compacts available for occupational licensing. So respiratory therapy would be the 18th here. And since 2016, there's been over 350 pieces of individual compact legislation adopted by states. You can see here from the state that 51 states have adopted at least one compact, and 42 states have adopted at least three compacts. So you can see how states this has really resonated with states as a way to increase legislative portability and achieve many other policy goals with the participation in compact. So here is a list of those legislature compacts, those 17 legislature compacts that are currently available for state adoption. So these have ranged from being very recent, available as of last year, to have been in existence for several years and already operational. And those practitioners who are qualified to use the compact are from compact member state already able to utilize and benefit from them. On the next slide here, you'll see our compact development process here. So again, this is a multi-year effort, and that's intentional. One, because we're wanting to make sure that the compact, the model legislation, is reflective of the professional and regulatory needs of the states and the profession itself. And so that requires the convening of a lot of different voices in the room, making sure that it really reflects those needs. So we are currently in the tail end of our second part here, or phase one of development, where we had our technical assistance group and document team, which comprised of professional and regulatory stakeholders who helped draft the model of compact legislation. So we're entering our stakeholder review period, starting with this first of two public review sessions. So we're able to help explain what the model legislation says and be able to gather comments and questions from those listening in here. But you'll see here in phase 2 and 3 the work to be ahead. So once that model legislation is finalized, it will then go for consideration before state legislatures. And so, as you know, from the legislative process, that can take several years for individual states to consider and enact a compact, depending on their own wants and timelines. And so with that process involved, and then the compact, once it gets its activation threshold met, becoming operational. So all that can take several years to get in place. But because of that intentional and longstanding kind of effort here, really built for the future and to be a solution that will be really resilient for state needs and professional needs to come. On the next slide here, we'll detail a little bit more about stakeholder review. So these are different steps that we'll be taking. So again, the draft compact has been circulated now for public comment. Hosting these virtual meetings, again, is a way to receive comments and feedback. But ultimately, at the conclusion of our stakeholder review period in August, the document team will consider those comments and edit the compact as appropriate before it's released to states for their own consideration and enactment. So really looking at the 2025 sessions for states to have the first opportunity to enact the compact. All right, we're next going to go into the respiratory care interstate compact model. So talk a little bit more specifically about how it works. So first, we're going to start with some commonly used terms here. So ones that you'll find defined in the compact model legislation, but ones that we'll also be using throughout the presentation here today. So first, home state license. So by that, we mean a license that is active and not encumbered, and it's a license that's been issued by a member state to practice respiratory therapy. So a key point here is that in order to use the compact, you both have to be licensed in a compact member state, but also reside in that compact member state. When we refer to member state, that can include your home state, but it's really talking about any state that is enacted and is participating in the compact. A remote state is also a member state, but it's really in relation to a state that you'll be applying through the compact the ability to practice and provide respiratory care services. The compact privilege is the mechanism, is the authorization that we refer to in the model legislation that provides someone the ability to practice respiratory care services. A compact privilege is applied for in each member state that someone wants to provide services in, There is a process involved with that, but it is the mechanism that provides the same benefits as licensure, and again, providing you that ability to provide services in another state. And then lastly, the Compact Commission is the government agency that is created from the compact. It is comprised of delegates from each compact member state whose duty is to administer the compact based on what's defined in the legislation. Here is a graphic about the process for someone to apply for a compact privilege of practice. So say we have a respiratory therapist that's licensed in a compact member state. They otherwise meet the qualifications, including having an active unencumbered license, and that member state is where they currently reside. So they would apply for that compact privilege through the Compact Commission based on information received from the commission by the commission from the compact member states. And then that practitioner's information eligibility is verified based on that information. And then the practitioner would pay any associated fees and complete any jurisprudence requirements as requested by the compact member state to provide services. And assuming all those conditions are met, then that compact privilege would be issued. On the next slide here, you'll have another visual look about a scenario that could occur, saying, just assuming that all these states are compact member states. So say someone who both resides and is licensed in Alabama applies individually for and receives a compact privilege in these 4 other compact member states based on their license that they have with Alabama. So that, again, that license is your ticket into the compact. A quick word here on credentials. So knowing that there are 2 primary credentials that are available to respiratory therapists, the RRT credential and CRT credential, and that there's a handful of states that have moved to make the RRT credential the minimum level for someone to be licensed in that state. The compact takes that into account here. So anyone that has an RRT credential may obtain a privilege of practice or that authorization of practice in any compact member state. However, if you have a CRT credential, you're able to access and receive a privileged practice in compact member states that have CRT as the minimum standard, but you're not able to access a compact privilege in a state that has RRT as the minimum standard. Next, going to a scenario regarding adverse actions here. So again, with our example of having Alabama as a state of home state licensure, and then a privilege issued in these 4 compact member states. So, say something were to have occurred in Alaska, and Alaska, based on its own laws and regulations, revoked a compact privilege. That information is then shared with the other compact member states, so they can assess that action and then, based on their state laws and regulations, take appropriate action. So there could be a scenario here where Arizona may choose to take an action against that compact privilege based on the information received from Alaska, but Arkansas chooses not to. So again, it really depends on each state to make that determination, unless Alabama chooses to revoke the license. If Alabama revokes the license in this scenario, then that does automatically revoke the privileges issued for every compact member state. And that's because the practitioner has to have a unencumbered license to access the compact in the first place. So that is one exception to that scenario. All right, so that concludes our overview of the Respiratory Therapy Care Compact. I'll turn it next to Grant to go through a section-by-section review.
Thank you, Carl. I'm going to get my screens switched around real quick, and we will jump into the actual document here to go through some of to go through it and discuss some of the key provisions. Okay. One second. Okay. Carl, you seeing the document there?
I am, yes.
All right, so we'll jump right into to the document here, which if you see on our website, which we'll share a link to, is also readily available there on our website. So this is what as Carl mentioned, the document team and technical assistance group, our working groups, have been working on the last few months. Now an initial draft is available for you all to review, and we'll go through it here. So the first section of the Respiratory Care Interstate Compact is the title and purpose statement. This is non-binding statutory language, but lays out here some of the great advantages of for a state to enact the Respiratory Care Interstate Compact, and then a quick overview there in section 1. We'll go through some of the definitions really quick because I know Carl mentioned a few of the key definitions here. Pretty, a lot of these definitions coincide with how these terms are going to be defined in your state statute. So the intent here is to make these as close as possible, to replicate these as close as possible, to be as clear as needed for licensees and licensing boards. I'll note a few quick definitions here. We do define respiratory therapist and respiratory care practitioner. Someone who holds a credential with the National Board for Respiratory Care, and we also provide some flexibility with the term there, and then a footnote there at the bottom encouraging bill drafters to integrate their own definitions if need be. Quick definition of respiratory therapy and respiratory therapy practice. We define the Respiratory Therapy Licensing Authority as an agency, board, or other body of a state responsible for licensing respiratory therapists. So a few quick definitions there, if you go through the document, are good to reference. So moving into more of the kind of meat and potatoes section of the compact here in section 3. Section 3 lays out requirements that must be in place in a state, or a state must do, in order to become a compact member state and be able to participate and both issue privileges and allow their licensees to obtain privileges. So we'll go through a few of these requirements really quick. One, they must enact the compact through their legislative system. And we'll cover that a little bit later in the presentation, but know that it must enact a compact that is not materially different from this language here in the model compact. 2, they must license respiratory therapists, must have a strong licensure structure in place for the profession. They must participate in the commission's data system, which we'll touch on later. Must have a mechanism in place for receiving and investigating complaints against licensees, which is very standard. Notify the commission of any adverse actions against a licensee. They must comply with the rules of the commission, which we'll touch on that process later. Here on requirement number 7, on 3A7, they must require an applicant to hold a credential for the National Board for Respiratory Care as a requirement for respiratory therapist licensure. So in order for a state to become a compact member state, they must require their applicants to hold that credential. And then a few requirements here, or 8 here is a requirement that would need to take place when they enact the compact, which would be granting compact privileges to a holder of an active home state license in their state. And then number 9, states must complete criminal background checks for each new licensee at the time of initial licensure in order to become a compact member state. And then another note there in B, nothing in this compact prohibits a member state from charging fees for granting that compact privilege, which we typically see those fees do in very hardly ever instances will go over the regular rate for a license in that state. On section 4, the compact lays out requirements of a licensee in order to obtain a compact privilege, what the licensee must do in order to obtain that privilege. They must hold an active home state license as a respiratory therapist that Carl touched on earlier in the presentation. They must hold an entry to practice credential from the National Board for Respiratory Care that will qualify them for licensure in the remote state which they're seeking the privilege. That was the RRT CRT breakdown that Carl did earlier, and that is the language in the compact that makes that process possible. Must have not had any adverse action against the license within the previous 2 years. They must, when they go to seek that privilege, they must notify the commission that they are seeking such privilege. Pay any applicable fees, such as state and renewal fees for the privilege itself, which, as we said, those fees never exceed that limit of what a normal license is. On 6, it must meet any jurisprudence requirements which are established by the member state. Jurisprudence requirements were in the definition section above, and those are defined as law and rule exams, which I know are fairly common in a few states. So if those are in place in a state and you want to seek a privilege there, you'll be required to complete those. Number 7, you must report to the commission any adverse action which was taken by a non-compact member state within 30 days. That requirement partnered with the requirement in Section 3 that requires states to report their adverse actions. It covers that the commission will be aware of any adverse action taken against a possible applicant for a privilege. Number 8, they must report to the commission their address and then consent to process by mail with their domicile. And then that sums up the list of requirements here, but Section 4 also goes into a few more aspects about the compact privilege. The compact privilege is valid until the expiration date, or if a home state license is revoked, the compact privilege would be valid until that home state license is no longer valid. They must comply with all the requirements of subsection A to maintain their compact privilege. The licensee, if those requirements are met, no adverse actions taken, and they pay any applicable fees with renewal fees for their home state license, they'll be able to keep the privilege. A licensee shall function within the scope of practice which is authorized by the remote state. A good way we like to explain this is you follow the laws and rules and scope of practice in the state in which you're practicing in, or at the highest priority is where your patient would be located. And we know that could be applicable at times with remote practice. On D here, if a licensees, this kind of covers D, E, and F here cover if the compact privilege is removed by a remote state, the remote state can revoke that privilege until they have met the requirements here in E. When the home state license is no longer if they lose their privilege due to the home state license being encumbered, they shall lose that privilege until the home state license is no longer encumbered and 2 years have elapsed from the date of that adverse action. And in any case where a licensee were to lose their license because of the issue with the home state, they would have to meet the requirements here in E, as well as the requirements listed here in Section 4A. So 1 through 9, they would have to make sure they meet those and what's in E to obtain that privilege once again. So that sums up the provisions around the compact privilege. Here in Section 5, we have provisions on active military members or their spouses, and a couple benefits for them. Here in 5A, you see that the licensee may designate a home state as one of the following: either their home of record, permanent change of station, or their state of current residence. If it's different than that permanent change of station or home of record. And I just wanted to point out earlier for the non-military member or their spouse, that home state is going to be determined where your domicile is. And then here in B, another benefit for active military members and their spouses shall not be required to pay a commission fee for any privilege, and then remote states have the ability to either reduce that fee or charge no fee at all to the to active military members or their spouses seeking a privilege through this compact. Section 6, we'll move into adverse actions. Here in 6A, a member state and where a licensee is licensed, essentially they have full autonomy to issue adverse actions against that. That is maintained if they enact the compact. A member state may also take adverse action based on significant investigative information of a remote state. So if an issue occurs in a remote state where an individual has a compact privilege, another member state can take adverse actions based on that information if that is applicable to take action against. Here in C, this is just a protection for member states so that they can allow their licensees and privilege holders to participate in alternative programs if they so choose to do that in lieu of adverse action. And here a few abilities of the remote state. They can take adverse action as set forth here against the licensee's compact privilege. They can issue subpoenas for investigations if that is necessary. They can recover costs of investigations from licensees. And then here in 4 and 5, I want to note this. And then here in F as well, down at the a little further down, these are protections for holders of a compact privilege who are performing an action in a state which is lawful in that state in which they are practicing, but in another state, another compact member state where they may hold their home state license or another privilege, that action may not be legal. This gives protections to the practitioners here so that they can perform any of the duties in a state in which they are practicing in, and without fear of repercussion if that action is illegal in another compact member state where they hold a license or privilege. And then here in E, we have the ability member states can come together in joint investigations if they so choose. It's adverse action. So that will sum up the section 6 on adverse actions. Here we will move into the section 7, which covers the compact commission. So 7A here just outlines the role of the commission and how it'll be set up. In B, we kind of it lays out, the compact lays out membership, voting, and meetings provisions. Here in B1, it states that each member state shall be limited to one delegate that's selected by that member state's respiratory therapy licensing authority. That delegate shall either be a member or a designated. That delegate shall be either administrator of that respiratory therapy licensing authority in the state, or they may delegate a staff member from that licensing authority. In 3, the commissions by rule or bylaws establish terms of office. Commission can recommend removal or suspension of a delegate. Have the authority to fill a vacancy of its delegates occurring in the commission within 60 days. One vote, one delegate, one state. So for each member state, they'll have one delegate who gets one vote in all matters. A delegate vote in person, or the commission can set up capabilities for telecommunication voting. A requirement that they should meet at least once a year. And then a lot of provisions here that lay out the powers of the commission. A lot of these are just the financial management of the commission and its data system, the ability to set rules and bylaws. He said maintaining financial records and those rules and bylaws, conducting legal action, having essentially executive authority over the commission. The compact commission will also, here in 22, wanted to point this out, the commission can make determinations on whether a state's adopted language is materially different from the compact language, and to make sure, and then the commission will be responsible for ensuring that a state meets the requirements we laid out in section 3 that must be in place for a state to become a compact member state. Here, the executive committee, that's a more concentrated group of leaders of the commission, has executive function over the commission, as we see here. In 2, we have the layout of the executive committee, which is composed of 9 members. 7 of those are voting members made up of the commission, and 2 ex officio non-voting members. Commission can remove any member of the executive committee in accordance with the bylaws, annual meeting requirements. Here in F, I want to point out meetings of the commission. These
Over
public
a little.
open public meetings. And they must provide 24 hours notice for emergency public meetings, and then 30 days notice for public meetings. These are the requirements of the commission's meetings are compliant with some of the strictest open meeting laws that states have across the country, so we can be as inclusive as possible to other states' open meeting laws. A few provisions here on closed meetings, if those are necessary. Like I said, more protections here that keep the meetings and the materials of those meetings and the actions of the commission open as instrumentalities of the state. Commission does have the ability to levy annual assessments, and also collect money from those fees. A few provisions here on qualified immunity for the members of the commission. I'll go through these next few sections fairly quickly. We refer to these as our boilerplate language, which is very consistent amongst different compacts. But I'll go ahead and quickly describe here the compact data system, which is used to facilitate that licensure. That data system consists of all licensure data, any adverse actions, any non-confidential information related to alternative programs, protection, the presence of any current significant investigative information to help with those joint investigations. And then a few protections here. It protects the information in the data system to just consist of the licensing authorities of the member states. The protection here did not include criminal history record information in that data system. And then the ability for member states to designate any information that may not be shared with other non-member states. Rulemaking provisions. The commission, they have rulemaking authority. The rules that are made up of the commission have the force of law in a state, similar to the structure in which your respiratory therapy licensing authority has the ability to promulgate rules based on the statutes they're empowered by. 30 days notice of any potential rule changes with the ability for the public to comment on those and attend hearings. These hearings are recorded in which rules are made. And the effective dates of rules should be no sooner than 30 days to allow for further public review. Here on emergency rulemaking provisions, these also, like we said with the commission's open meetings laws, are compliant with some of the strictest open meeting laws and revision periods in the country, so that we can be compliant with states' rules around those. Some more quick, just legal protections here on the compact. Terms on default or termination of membership, or how disputes are solved between states. I want to point out here in section 11, the effective date of the compact will be when it is enacted in the 7th member state. The first 7 member states will be known as the charter member states, and those will be some of the first states to take part in the commission and its rulemaking process. More provisions here on withdrawal if necessary. And we'll kind of just wrap up at the end here with some more of that boilerplate language, liberally construed, and further legal protections here. In 13, just a few things to point out as we wrap up. Nothing to prohibit or enforcement of any other law of a member state. So this takes precedence over the other conflicting state law the compact will, and nothing in this compact will impact an initial licensure. So let's turn off my screen there, and we'll transition back over to the presentation. Go through that. I'll wrap this up with here just a quick review over a few of the key provisions that we just went over in the compact. Section 3, I'll lay that state participation, which lists the requirements for states to join. That includes requiring the FBI background check and NBRC credential. Listing the requirements in Section 4 for the compact privilege and outlining privilege removal and reissuance. Section 6 lays out adverse actions, which provide authority to member states to take discipline, and outlining procedures for joint investigations. 7 establishes the commission and the open meeting requirements. Section 8, as we said, establishes the compact data system, facilitating interstate licensure, including various provisions protecting licensure data and information. And then we wrap up with Section 13, the boilerplate language, which we refer to it as, providing rulemaking procedures for the commission and setting compact activation threshold of 7 states where the commission may meet. And on that note, I wanted to share with you all a bit on the process for how you can participate in the compact. And the first step is that your state needs to enact the compact. The model legislation will need to be enacted, and the state legislators go through the process through the legislator and being signed by the governor before it can be activated. We anticipate the compact should be finalized in the fall of this year and should be available for enactment in 2025. The compact won't be active until it's passed in enough states to hit its activation threshold, which is 7 states, and that will empower the commission to begin meeting. Once the compact is activated, as we said, the commission will be formed and begin the process of issuing compact privileges, which will take place after the initial rules are set up and the data system is developed. So we'll make sure to send this presentation to everyone who registered today. But I wanted to just lay out here that we have a survey up on our website, which we encourage everyone to fill out and provide any feedback you have on the document. And that will, as we said earlier, this is an initial draft of the compact language, and the working groups who put this draft together will see the results of this survey when they reconvene after our stakeholder review period, which ends in July, and they will reconvene and make any adjustments necessary to the language before it's finalized. And we look to get your all's feedback in order to help facilitate that process. So here, just some quick contact information for myself and Carl. You can see us up there, and then the link to our website, which has the copy of the language, the stakeholder review survey, and links to our meetings. And soon we will have a recording uploaded there as well. So we're going to go into the question and answer portion of today's presentation. Just share our contact information. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat. And if we can't get to it today, our contact information is here in the presentation, which we'll send out, and feel free to send any questions you may have along with that if we can't get to them today. But for now, please submit those into the chat. But first, I'm going to go through a few quick frequently asked questions we get on just about every piece of compact we have worked on. As Carl mentioned, this will be our, I believe, 18th interstate compact. This went through our development process. So a lot of experience here, and getting a lot of similar questions. First question is, do I have to be licensed in my home state to join the compact? Yeah, and the answer is yes, you must hold a license that's issued by your home state, which, as we said in the document, is defined by the licensee's domicile. Compact defines as that domicile a license from a state other than the home state does not qualify one to participate in the compact. How much will the compact privilege cost? And that is a question we get quite a bit, and for now that's indeterminable. but the compact member states will set up a fee to that structure, and respiratory therapists will pay a fee for each compact member state they wish to practice in. They'll pay that privilege fee. Like we said earlier, with other compacts, the fee for a compact privilege is typically equivalent or less than the fee for a license. Another question here, how will the compact impact licensure requirements? The Respiratory Care Interstate Compact will have no impact on a state's requirements for initial license or license renewal. So if you don't want to participate in the compact, you'll see no change to the licensure structure in your state. This is just an added benefit, an alternative optional pathway for those who wish to practice in an expedited manner in other states by obtaining a compact privilege. A couple more questions here. How is the compact different from other existing licensure portability laws? You may have heard universal licensure recognition or licensure by endorsement passed in your states, or reciprocity. And unlike the reciprocity agreements or universal licensure recognition, compacts will reduce barriers to practicing in multiple states and provide for two-way reciprocity in each compact member state, not just between one or two states. But each state that enacts the compact, rather than simply making it easier just for out-of-state licensees or out-of-state practitioners to become licensed in another state with that reciprocity. Another question, does the licensee need to complete continuing education in every state where they practice? And the answer is no. Practitioners must complete continuing education requirements to maintain just their home state license. As we said, that holding that unencumbered active home state license is your ticket to obtaining compact privileges in other states, and you won't need to complete any continuing education in those states to maintain your privilege. You just have to maintain the home state license and perform the CEs in that state. So that wraps up our FAQs. I'm going to turn to the chat now and address some of the questions we have in there. And as I said, probably may not be able to get to everyone's questions today, but our email inboxes are open if you all wish to ask any questions that we couldn't get to today. I have a question here for the RT or CRT credential. Do they need to hold their credential when applying, or do they need to maintain it? Yeah, and we understand some states only require that you initially receive it, while others require it is maintained. The compact states that credential, or whether it's the RT or CRT, must be an active credential before they can obtain compact privileges in other states. So and like we said, you still won't have to maintain if you want to just maintain your home state license. You'll meet the requirements in your state. This won't have any impact on that. But just to be able to obtain privileges, you will need an active credential. Scroll down. I know Carl touched on a few of your questions, so thanks for that, Carl. And Carl, let's see, we touched that in the FAQs. There is no minimum on a good question here about minimum number of people hold a license to maintain compact license in any given state. No, all your state would need to do is enact the compact, meet the requirements of the compact, and you can obtain compact privileges in any other compact member state. It's no requirements on any type of licensees or anything. Good question here. I'll share with the group. I think if your home state does not have a licensing requirement, I believe Alaska may be the only state with that. But any state with no licensure would not be able to join the compact. Had a question: can an individual who was disciplined in one state, had a question on discipline, and there we go. Can an individual who has been disciplined in one state continue to practice in another state? And that, as Carl had mentioned, that's dependent upon if that state is the home state or not. If that is a state in which someone has a compact privilege, that would be up to the other compact member states. They can make a determination on that, but it's just action. If a state in which I have a compact privilege, a remote state, takes action against my privilege, that doesn't automatically disqualify me from practicing in other states. But if that action were to take place, and that home state license were to be encumbered, the individual would lose all of their compact privileges in each of the remote states they have those privileges in. And we see Carl shared the survey link in the chat. A question here: what are the costs to each state licensing board to start participation in a compact? And then any objections we've seen at the state level. I know that those costs for state licensing boards can vary significantly based on the state or the structure within that state, how they handle their finances. Carl, do you have any thoughts on that?
Is this to Elizabeth's question?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, cost to licensing boards to participate in the compact, there could be some costs associated with plugging into the compact data system. That cost would be determined once the compact is activated and then we're kind of becoming operational. So I think that's kind of the primary thing that we would really point to. However, there is a revenue component for licensing boards when the purposes of having the ability for compact member states to be able to charge a fee for a privilege to practice is to help offset those costs that they might accrue. So that is a common question that we get through the state legislative process, is the cost component to that, and a good way to look at your state specific costs, because it could be variable based on your own state's setup, is to look at if your state's already adopted a licensure compact that might be similar in model and scope to the respiratory therapy compact, which the prevailing model is the mutual recognition compact. That can provide a really good indicator for you when your state's considering it.
Thanks, Carl. Got another question in the chat from Heather. She says she has a compact nursing license. You said earlier there's a nursing compact, and she has a license through that. And if you were to hold a respiratory therapy license as well in your state, you would not need to redo any FBI fingerprint or go through any other FBI criminal background check. That just must be in place by the state in which you have a home state license that has enacted the compact. And in order to become a member state, the state must have a FBI background check requirement in place for initial licensees. So you've likely had that fingerprint, you've had that background check performed on you because it's already a requirement in the state. So you would not have to go through that again or really fill out any other paperwork. Just it doesn't, any other compact licenses wouldn't be necessarily applicable. You would just go through the same process there. Question on the ideal entity to initiate joining the compact, state licensure board or your state affiliate. I would say either or both. On the enactment piece, as you go across to states working to enact the compact, state associations are extremely beneficial in working to help enact compacts. Your state respiratory society, it's what we see. A lot of other professions will have their professional associations do a lot of the groundwork there to enact a compact. State licensure boards are also super key to this. This is a regulatory piece of legislation. So in any ways you talk to your licensing board or encourage they support the compact, that's a great additional step that could take in place to help get the compact enacted in your state. A question From Stephen, it asked, when a practitioner is disciplined in a member state, is that state required to inform the commission that the individual has been disciplined and that the member state should take action against the practitioner? I'll give that a yes and no. So the state is required to inform the commission that the individual has been disciplined. And that information would go into the compact data system, which would help to inform. It's a shared data system amongst all of the licensing authorities, and through that data system, other member states would see that. But the the state in which took the action there would be no formal recommendation or formal revocation of that license in other states. The other states would have the ability to make that determination unless the action is taken by the home state. If the action is taken by the home state, that will automatically end any privileges that individual has in any remote states. But states do not typically make a recommendation. They can join in joint investigations. Any more questions? The question on state societies that want to move to enact a compact license that do not currently have a lobbying firm. We don't typically make any kind of recommendations on that front, but just encourage state associations to take the action or whatever necessary to talk to legislators. A lot of action that just practitioners or members of state associations can do. Maybe set up lobby days at their state capitol, or just reach out by email or set up meetings with their state legislators and talk about the importance of the compact. So having resources at a state association's disposal are certainly great and beneficial, certainly to enacting compact, but there is a lot that practitioners can do themselves to help with those efforts. Another question: does the background check need to be performed within a certain time frame to be used? And the answer there is no. The only requirement around the background check is that a state, to become a compact member state, must have that requirement in place for their initial licensees in order to become a member state, and so that an individual would need that requirement in their state to be able to be in a compact member state in the first place. Carl touched on cost there. Front end. Okay, I think that summarizes all of our questions. We got a few minutes left in the meeting. If anybody would like to raise their hand or just to raise their hand or put another question in the chat, we can address that here. I got one comment there, and we'll take a look at the survey to make sure it's working fine.
Is the intention of the survey for individuals to comment on it, or are you looking for comments from each particular state society
No,
or everything?
the survey is open to anybody who wishes to fill it out. We'll be taking that information. It'll be going back to our working groups, who will consider it in August when they finalize the compact language.
Okay. I'm kind of curious. I don't know that you can answer this question, but there was a state law enacted in Ohio within the last few months that allows for license reciprocity. So I'm not sure whether we need to push for this compact or not. Any thoughts on that?
So I'll say on the issue of reciprocity. So if Ohio passes reciprocity in their state, you're a licensed respiratory therapist in Ohio, and you want to go across the Ohio River into Cincinnati or into Covington or Northern Kentucky and practice. You yourself wouldn't be able to do that through just the Ohio passing that law. So an individual in Kentucky or Michigan or would be able to come into Ohio and practice. But
Right.
an individual licensee, if I'm an Ohio resident and the reciprocity law passes, that really does nothing for me. But with the compact being enacted in this, if Ohio were to enact the compact, that would provide that kind of the ability of an individual in Ohio, respiratory therapist in Ohio, to obtain compact privileges that allow them to practice in other states, which reciprocity does not do.
Right. But so somebody from Michigan who wants to come to Ohio could do that through reciprocity, and this compact wouldn't override that, in other words.
No.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. If you don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's meeting. I want to thank everybody for being active and participating with us today, and we thank everyone's participation and interest in the Respiratory Care Interstate Compact, and thank you all for your time today. We'll wrap up and make sure to send this presentation out to everyone, and then have